The Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Ali Bongo Ondimba, President of the Gabonese Republic. I request protocol to escort His Excellency.
Au nom
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Ali Bongo Ondimba, President of the Gabonese Republic, and I invite him to address the Assembly.
Mesdames,
Heads of State and Government, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, I convey to you my congratulations on your election to the presidency of the 77th General Assembly of the United Nations, and I wish you every success. I greet and congratulate your predecessor, Mr. Abdullah Shahid, for the commitment which was patently clear throughout the 76th session. To the Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, I reiterate the full support of my country as he serves our organization. Mr. President, I am delighted to once again stand earnestly before this rostrum because the situation demands just that. Indeed, the international system is at a critical juncture. The world struggles to recover from a pandemic and sits in the clutches of a multidimensional crisis. The emergence of new centers of influence means that positions have become increasingly more entrenched. And this situation means that we must prioritize ongoing dialogue in order to find global consensus, rather than prioritizing power struggles as we tackle issues which are sensitive within the multilateral system. In the face of rivalry between powers and in the face of multifaceted challenges which are of shared concern, it would be dangerously naive to continue to opt for power struggles or for unilateral positions. The interconnected nature of global issues and of national economies means that we must engage in dialogue in order to respond appropriately and, above all, collectively to the most serious threats to international peace and security. We are in the last quarter of a year which has seen global challenges grow tougher. They have laid waste to common and individual efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. With less than 8 years to go until the deadline, it is crucial to evaluate our progress in light of a threat which the COVID-19 pandemic has meant continues to weigh heavy on our economies. A threat which is just as insidious now hovers over our economies. This threat is inflation. Throughout the world, inflation is reaching tragic highs. No one is spared, not businesses or households, not the North or the South. Its effects are devastating. As such, we must act, individually of course. That is exactly what Gabon is doing by subsidizing certain commodities and by keeping their prices at certain levels. But here too, we will not successfully overcome this problem if we do not act collectively in a coordinated fashion and with a sense of solidarity. This is yet one more challenge issued to the world. We must together, all together, overcome it.
President, this year marks many new beginnings for Gabon as we arise from the tragedy and forced inertia of the coronavirus pandemic and reopen to the world. We are the newest member of the Commonwealth of Nations, home to 2.5 billion people, 1/3 of the world's population, with shared values of respect for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. My country is broadening horizons for our citizens and seizing the chance for our young people to benefit from studying, traveling, and building business relationships far beyond our own borders. At the same time, Gabon takes its place on the world stage, not alone, but as a proud African nation. But the problems that our world faces today are global, as are the solutions. We must all be outward-facing, not inward-looking, as we confront the difficulties of the world where resources are finite and the population growing. This month, our Commonwealth family has lost its leader, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Through the union that she loved so deeply, the Queen offered respect, friendship, and wise counsel to many independent nations around the world, small or large. She promoted peace, liberty, and shared values, and fostered the spirit of cooperation. As the new head of the Commonwealth, His Majesty King Charles III can be assured of my full support and that of the Gabonese people. A dear friend of Gabon for many years, King Charles III shares my enthusiasm for protecting our natural environment and biodiversity in the same worries for global climate and sustainability. Mr. President, 50 years after the Stockholm Conference, humanity faces an unprecedented triple environmental crisis: climate change, the biodiversity extinction crisis, and pollution, notably by plastics. Regarding climate, with 88 forest cover and deforestation well below 0.1%, Gabon is a high forest, low deforestation country par excellence. Since COP15 in Copenhagen, Gabon has net absorbed over 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide. We absorb over 100 million tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere every year. In other words, we have already achieved, indeed exceeded the Paris Agreement objective of carbon neutrality. We are counting on the creation of a net sequestration carbon market to enable us to maintain this performance through 2050 and beyond. Secondly, I found the biodiversity crisis extremely alarming. COP15 in Montreal will be a decisive moment for humanity, and it is critical that we adopt an ambitious global biodiversity framework. The time has come to transition from billions to trillions by mobilizing 1% of global GDP for nature. Finally, pollution has become a chronic problem in our cities, our rivers, our oceans. We must lose no time adopting a binding international agreement on plastic pollution, as well as a treaty on the high seas. In order to achieve sustainable development goals, our international agreements and national policies must address the interdependence of this crisis. Mr. President, threats to international peace and security continue to increase exponentially faced with the proliferation of the armed groups, restricting their access to arms will be at the heart of my country's priorities during our presidency of the United Nations Security Council in October. In this regard, I would like to reiterate my country's call for a robust partnership to ensure greater security in the Gulf of Guinea. Many countries face humanitarian crises exacerbated by armed conflict. This is the case in Ukraine, where the war has led to a worsening of the situation of countries and regions already experiencing food shortages. This is why my country has clearly expressed its opposition not only to this bloody war, but to any form of war. Gabon, which has never experienced armed conflict, will continue to advocate and favor dialogue and negotiation over confrontation. Mr. President, access to education for children should be considered sacred. Therefore, I would like to express my country's resolute support for the sanctuarizations of schools on places of education, and particularly during armed conflicts. To compromise education is to place a mortgage on future generations. It is in this vein that I've made the promotion of women and young people a key priority. In 2015, I launched the Decade of the Gabonese Women, which aims to reserve a place of choice for women and children in all aspects of governance in Gabon. Mr. President, internationalism is at a turning point. We need to reform the United Nations to ensure better consideration of the aspirations of Africa. This is particularly applicable to the Security Council, where Africa's role needs to be consolidated. Africa has waited long enough, and we will not wait any longer. In light of the strong interdependence of nations, it is crucial that we put an end to the use of sanctions, working instead to build bridges of prosperity. As such, I call once again for the total lifting of the embargo that has affected the government and the people of Cuba for several decades. Inevitably, the principal victims of any embargo are the weak and the vulnerable. In the Middle East, Gabon has always believed that a two-state solution is the only way to achieve peace and security. It is the responsibility of our generation to resolve this problem. To conclude, Mr. President, I would like to reiterate Gabon's attachment to the principles and values of solidarity at the heart of the United Nations Charter. To this end, I reiterate my country's solemn appeal to all members of the international community to live up to our shared commitments in order to ensure peace, security, and dignity for the peoples of the world. I thank you.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I would like to thank the President of Gabon for his statement, and I ask protocol to please accompany His Excellency.